everyone. So as Mike said, my name's Kyle Torres. I'm the Channel Account Executive for Sophos' MSP program, looking after UK and Ireland. So a little bit of a background about myself. I'm coming up with 6 years with Sophos, working for a security vendor, doing cybersecurity day in, day out, working with managed service providers on their security offerings. I am based in the UK. Prior to moving to the UK, I was actually in the US Army. I did some intelligence work there as well. So I've always had that sort of intelligence interest in my background. And throughout my entire time with Sophos, I've actually been working with Qlic. They've been a partner of mine. I've seen their sort of security offerings evolve over time. So this is, a pretty interesting launch. So hopefully, everyone here will find this interesting and have some questions at the end. But we'll go ahead and crack on. So Sophos is a security vendor. Just an overview for Sophos as a company. We're a cybersecurity vendor. All we do is the only products we vend are security products. We specialize in cybersecurity as a service. So our MDR, which is managed detection and response, we're going to go into that and what that definition means, how it works in much more detail. But that managed detection and response, we also have a dedicated incident response service called Rapid Response, as well as endpoint offerings across endpoint security, network security, public cloud security, email. So we have that threat intelligence and response. All of that's powered by our threat intelligence comes from Sophos Labs. We've had Sophos Labs for decades. We are one of the major contributors to the global virus definition database. We have actually a Sophos Labs location at our Abingdon headquarters, so just outside of Oxford in the UK. We have over 547,000 customers, over 4,000 employees. We've actually seen 85% across our MDR growth for the past year, and we've been recognized accordingly with that. So we have quite a few recognitions across not just Gartner, but other market and industry analysts. So we're going to start with taking a look at the threat landscape. So what's going on out there? What are we seeing? Sophos does a lot of market research every year. We publish different reports, like our State of Ransomware report, where we interview organizations of different sizes around the world, and we take those statistics to our ransomware report. So we're going to take a look at some of that. We're going to see, what that IT security landscape looks like. What are we seeing the current way, to deal with that is, and what's the sort of new safe world look like there. So just to summarize, we want to put this summary up front. We're going to have a few different statistics, but the main statistics we're going to be drilling into. 66% of the organizations we interviewed for the State of Ransomware 2022 report, and this is around 5,600 end user organizations, were hit by ransomware in the past year. 46% of organizations paid the ransom. 65% of attacks successfully encrypted data. 1.4 million pounds, was the average ransomware recovery cost. And we're going to go into each of these in a little bit more detail. But why are these statistics this way? Well, cyber threats is, a global priority. When we do this research, we look at everywhere around the world. And if we look at some of the things that have happened in the past couple of years around the world to deal, in regards to sort of legislations or official announcements, the World Economic Forum had listed cybersecurity amongst their top 4 priorities. The United States had their presidential executive order on improving the nation's cybersecurity. And the European Commission proposed their joint cyber unit to step up response to large-scale security incidents. Now, these are from 2021. If we look at current events, if we look at what's happened throughout 2022, we're going to see things like in 2022, the United States making it illegal to pay ransoms. We're going to see more frameworks come out of the EU, like the NIS, the NIS. So not the NIST, that framework from the US, but the NIS, the NIST framework, in the EU. And we're seeing, even in the UK, we're seeing things like, Cyber Essentials, that's getting more popular, and where there's no actual government legislation in the UK. That could be something we see in the next couple of years. So it's a global priority. But who's the target here? So we see a lot around the enterprise, and that's typically what you see sort of hit the news is when these really large organizations get hit. So what we've done is we've taken a look at it by industry, but we're also going to look at the small businesses. We're going to look at how it's impacting, that lower user space, not just those big enterprise organizations. But overall, this is what that spread looks like, that percentage of organizations hit by ransomware in the last year. So of that 66% from that initial statistic, we can see the highest percentage were those in media, leisure, and entertainment, retail, energy, oil, gas, and utilities. And then down at the lower end, you've got things like financial services, manufacturing, and production, lower education. If we think some of those reasons, financial services, where data protection is sometimes inherent, comes with business requirements, manufacturing and production, I imagine was probably higher a few years ago, but as supply chain attacks became a bit more prominent, their percentage has gone down a little bit. But then you have in the other categories, 69% other category. A lot of these organizations are linked by smaller types of industries and businesses that sit within the same supply chain. So it's not just a small percentage of businesses that deal with any of these. It's a good majority there. So even in that other category, it sits at 69%. And again, ransomware is not an enterprise issue. So this is another. So we looked at incident response cases by organization size. So again, within that same study, how many of your ransomware cases required incident response? And we can see that 25%, so a quarter of those, were in the 1 to 100 user space. And then the next one, another 32%, was in that 101 to 250. So over half, 50. So over half of those, 57%, is between 1 to 250. So we would consider that sort of the SMB into that mid-market. So we'll go ahead again, drill down some of these here. So we've seen that 66% of SMBs were hit. 66% of SMB organizations were hit by ransomware last year. $812,000 was the average SMB ransom payment. 11 days was the average intruder dwell time in ransomware attacks. So that's when we say intruder dwell time, 11 days was the average amount of time an intruder was on the machine before that ransomware attack took place. Overall. 4.3 days, that's the average gap between data exfiltration and ransomware deployment. So that's the amount of time that intruder is on your system. They have your data, but they have not yet deployed any ransomware. 4 days. 90% of those organizations said the attack impacted their ability to operate. And the average ransomware remediation cost for the SMB was in the range of $1.4 million. So what happens when you see this screen? When you turn on your computer and you open the screen on the laptop, you boot up your PC, and the first thing you see is your files are encrypted. You can't access anything. What needs to happen there? How are we going to deal with that? Ideally, what we would have to prevent that is this shift in IT security. We're going to see an adaptive security ecosystem. We're going to be able to manage that, everything from basic security management to security operations, with a system that is, as it says here, constantly learning and improving. But what we're seeing today, the reason that we've got these ransomware statistics as high as they are, is that's not the modern approach. It's not what's actually happening. What we're seeing is a lot of disparate tools. We're seeing a lot of manual processes. And what that is doing is that's giving us a reactive response time. And it's very all of it is making it very resource intensive. We don't want to be reactive in our response. If we can provide, if an attack happens and it gets blocked, and we can provide a root cause analysis afterwards, to see what happened, it's doing something proactive. But at the end of the day, you had to wait to get, attacked and blocked to be reactive. This puts us in a much more proactive position. That's where we want to be. And again, we want to reduce those manual processes, consolidate the tools we're using, and make things less resource intensive. Because what we see a lot of point security products. The average partner uses around over 40 different security products. And what we want to do is we need to look at consolidating that, and we do that with cybersecurity as a service. And we say point security products, we're talking about things like 9 different solutions from 9 different software vendors. And typically when you do something like that, those products tend to work in isolation. There's no sharing of information. They require multiple management consoles, and they're built separately. Whereas cybersecurity as a service with Sophos, we look at products that can work together. They can constantly share information. It's one centralized management console, and they're compatible by design. And I just wanted to actually mention, so on that cybersecurity as a service, note these are all things that Qlic as a Sophos partner, a Sophos managed security services partner, has done a good bit of work with as well. So the cybersecurity challenge, from a business perspective, the challenge we're seeing, cyber threats are accelerating in volume and sophistication. So there's an increase in the organizations that are getting hit by ransomware. Not just ransomware, but general cyber attacks. The cybersecurity tools are overwhelmingly costly and complex. Sorry, there we are. The average organization has more than 46 cybersecurity monitoring tools in place. And those SecOps teams that are trying to handle it are often drowning in alerts. The average organization spends around $7,500 on cybersecurity per employee. And then we have the skills gap issue. So hiring and retaining cybersecurity experts has become fiercely competitive. So there's a skills gap in the IT industry, even more so in cybersecurity. What we've seen from a sort of corporate security vendor perspective in the corporate space is that SMBs, we see those small businesses getting hit by more cyber attacks, but oftentimes they don't have the budget to create their own SOCs. They don't have their budget to hire these cybersecurity professionals, so they look at managed service providers that can provide these more advanced security services. What Sophos does is we make those available to those service providers to then be able to give access to the SMB. With this skills gap, the way it is, 5 or 6 years ago, the SMB really wouldn't have access to a SOC. Today they do, albeit it's not an internal one, but we can make that available. So it helps to solve some of that skills gap issue. And the solution, the way we fix that, is with MDR. So Sophos is MDR. So what is MDR? It is Managed Detection and Response. It is a fully managed 24/7 service delivered by experts who specialize in detecting and responding to cyber attacks that the technology solutions alone cannot prevent. We'll talk about what that really means, but the important thing, it's fully managed 24/7 service delivered by experts who specialize in detecting and responding. So it goes beyond that antivirus and anti-ransomware. It is a 24/7 detection and response service. If anything happens, they'll get notifications, they can take remediation actions. There's an incident response service baked in. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but it's MDR, Managed Detection and Response. So Sophos MDR, some of the things that make Sophos MDR so unique, we're compatible with multiple environments, so we can use our tools, someone else's tools, or and combinations of the two. We'll talk more about those integrations, what they mean. They're compatible with your needs, whether you need full-scale incident response or assistance making more accurate decisions. And they're compatible with your business. Our team has deep experience hunting threats targeting organizations in every industry. I will say that, Sophos, we've been around since 1985, founded in Oxford, or in Abingdon, just outside of Oxford, is where Sophos was founded. We've always been a security vendor, and we've always put our focus on the SMB, the mid-market, and how to scale upwards from there. So it's absolutely compatible with those smaller businesses, and the growth that they're looking for. So with cybersecurity as a service, we can do things like stop advanced human-led attacks, including ransomware. We still have that, antivirus and anti-ransomware baked in there, but now we've got a team of human analysts to actually stop human-led attacks. So we've had this sort of, to put this in another sort of interesting point about the threat landscape, there's this idea of the AI versus AI deadlock. And what that means is that a few years ago, when WannaCry was really going, so it was about 2017, WannaCry was hitting quite a bit, and the answer to that was AI. Realizing that we can use the AI element to look for behaviors for ransomware that doesn't have a known signature, combined with the crypto guard that we had, InterceptX, made for a pretty comprehensive anti-ransomware solution. So as we bring AI in, to combat AI from the attackers start to take control. They do things like automated active adversary, like use AI to try to beat our own AI, and then once they're inside, pass it over to a human, so it then is unique. So the response, from cybersecurity community is that we are going to bring humans back in for the defense. So we talk about, stopping advanced human-led attacks. We've been able to bring humans back in. Focus on growing your business. So monitor, detect, respond, enabling you and your team to focus on strategic initiatives. This is, like I said, this is 24/7. The majority of attacks tend to happen out of business hours. It's 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That is when the majority of those attacks happen. This is a 24/7 service, so you don't have to worry about anything. The community immunity portion, Sophos delivers cybersecurity for over 530,000 organizations. What this means, it's not just sort of a brag that we've got a lot of customers. Community immunity means that every time there's a detection, every time something gets detected, and filed away by our team, that protection gets pushed out to the entire Sophos community. So all of those virus definitions are now updated. So once it gets seen, that first time, we're able to log it, know about it. We push that out to every Sophos customer, as well as the wider sort of global virus definition database. Built on your existing protection. So this is where we're going to talk about how Sophos can leverage signals from across your existing ecosystem. So we're going to talk about those integrations. And then again, sleep better knowing we have you covered. It is 24/7, 365. It is the monitoring, the investigation, the response from start to finish that you don't have to worry about. So this was an interesting statistic I wanted to bring up, just again to note sort of how we've been working with Qlic here and how Sophos ticks these categories. So this is from CompTIA's Advanced Cybersecurity for MSPs guide from July 1st, 2022, and they recommend for managed service providers what to consider for third-party threat hunting. If your vendor is going to you're going to look at using an MDR service, do they have excellence in their core offerings? Do they have specific knowledge in a focused area with broad knowledge across multiple domains? Do they have the ability to perform cost-benefit analysis? Do they have access to threat intelligence? And with Sophos, we're able to tick each of these boxes, which is one of the reasons that we were able to, get excited and go forward with this MDR launch with Qlic, is that we're actually able to tick these boxes. If we talk about, having, excellence in a core category, well, if we look at MDR as that core category, this number has actually been updated this week. It's no longer 13,000 MDR customers. It is now 15,000 MDR customers. We're the largest MDR vendor globally. We're also a top-rated MDR provider on Gartner Peer Insights. Transparency is something quite important to us. We want our partners to go and give honest reviews. So we want customers to go and give those honest reviews. And we say go on to Gartner Peer Insights, where the community can rank and review us. So we have the most amount of reviews of our MDR service with a 4.8 out of 5, which I think I don't know if there's any 4.9 anymore. I think there's just a couple of 4.8s. We've got the most reviewed service there. But not just from those reviews, but also industry validated protection. Something that Sophos has done and will continue to do is we always put that out to the industry and say, well, you test it, you validate it, you publish the reports. We are absolutely fine with that. We consistently score at or near the top. We work with MITRE, so they've actually come out with their MITRE attack framework, which is a breakdown that analyzes the most commonly used techniques by cyber criminals, tactics and techniques by cyber criminals. And we actually have in our MDR reports, how any, noted attacks or attempted breaches conform to those MITRE attack characteristics. So, we do that industry validation, and we continue to do that. And then when we talk about that broad, so says they don't only want to have that excellence in core offerings, but also excellence in that knowledge across that broader offering. And one of Sophos's differentiators from the beginning has been the breadth of our portfolio. So we're not just an endpoint security specialist, we're also a network security specialist. We have email security, network security, Wi-Fi, we have firewalls, access points. We can do the endpoints, we can do mobile devices. So throughout all of our different areas, we have we're 12-time Gartner Magic Quadrant leader for the endpoint. We've got a range of awards through Forrester, Gartner, CRN for our network security. Our MDR is, getting traction in the managed services space, as well as our managed service program, our Flex program, which Qlic is a partner of, and then the Sophos channel program itself. So what we have with MDR, so both of these offerings are available through Qlic. So if you'd like to know more about either of these, please do let your account manager know. But Qlic will be offering both levels of Sophos MDR. Now they both include things like 24/7 threat monitoring and response. Apologies, it's Sophos MDR and MDR Complete. Now they both offer 24/7 threat monitoring and response. They both include the integrations and ability to integrate. You get all the reports with both of those. The intelligence briefing. So again, if we think back to those CompTIA points where it says, that access to threat intelligence and the transparency there, we make all of that available to the partner and by extension to yourselves. So you have access to that monthly intelligence briefing, the MDR Threatcast, a Sophos account health check, a expert-led threat hunting, threat containment. So with the Sophos MDR, it still includes the endpoint, it still includes the anti-ransomware, it also includes our XDR product, our XDR tools, which is an EDR solution, and our team actually uses those EDR tools. That is the full-scale incident response is MDR Complete. So it's the last one for MDR is the direct call-in support during active incidents. I think that is an important one. One of the things to remember is that this isn't just some team that's sitting there that you never speak to. This is a human-led team. There are people on the team. You can talk to those people if there's ever an incident. The Sophos SOC team, the MDR team picks up the phone and they call the contact that's listed. So you have that call and support during active incidents. What MDR Complete adds on to that is the full-scale incident response. So they also use that XDR agent for the incident response. It includes a 45-day dedicated incident response service. That incident response service lasts for 45 days on that environment, dealing with that issue. It also includes a root cause analysis of the event, and you will get a dedicated incident response lead. So just to also let everybody know, so that Sophos full-scale incident response, that is Sophos Rapid Response. That is our standalone incident response service that we've actually baked in to MDR Complete. But the good thing about that is available for any customer if they don't have Sophos installed, or any business that doesn't have Sophos installed, or has Sophos installed but not on all of the machines. It can still be a dedicated incident response service for those machines as well. Then you've got it included with MDR Complete. So what our MDR team actually sees, this is just an example on average what we would process per day. So we can update that 13,000 to 15,000 with over 15,000 MDR customers globally. We have 6 security operations centers, so our physical SOCs, our physical sites, we have 6 of those, one of which is here in the UK. We have around 31.4 million events. Of those 31.4 million events, 358,000 of those make it through as detections, so we're able to automatically block the majority of those. 358,000 make it through as detections. Of those 358,000, we need to raise 367 cases. Of those 367 cases, 47 of those require escalations. Of those escalations, 1 becomes an active threat that needs to be worked on. To give you an idea of the scale of the data that we work with, and the reason we see such a drop in that funnel from 358,000 detections, from 31 million down to 358,000, all the way down again to 367, is because this is our MDR team. They write playbooks when something happens. So the idea is when they only have to do it the first time, and they only have to do it once, manually once, and that's the first time. Afterwards, the process gets recorded into the playbook. The playbook is then referred to by Sophos Central anytime that happens again. So we're able to automate a lot. And the first time we see something, we can log it, file it, put it away, so that the next time it pops up, it's automated. We don't have to look at it again. What this translates to in time, so how long does it actually take us to do this? So working off of 99.98% of threats are automatically blocked by Sophos. What does get through? We see the average incident closure time for internal SOC teams. We've seen the average closure time. The median is 16 hours. The fastest we see the closure time is 3.7 hours, and the slowest being 30 hours to close the incident. And when we talk about incident closure time, we're talking from detection, investigation, and remediation. Looking at Sophos MDR, we're able to take that median of 16 hours and drop it down to an average of 38 minutes. So our average Sophos MDR threat response time is 1 minute to detect. As soon as that detection happens, there is an MDR analyst doing an investigation. If that investigation does require remediation, then that's an additional 12 minutes average to remediate. So 38 minutes from start to finish there. Something else that's interesting. One of the differentiators with the Sophos MDR is, again, the fact that it's baked, that we have our own Sophos endpoint agent baked into that. A lot of MDR vendors tend to only do the SOC portion and require you to use someone else's security, and then you have a list of those that they integrate with. Sophos is a vendor where we essentially spent years and years getting to the top of our game at the cybersecurity, the endpoint area, so the antivirus, the anti-ransomware, and then putting our SOC team immediately onto that. We've had our MDR, a year or more before last November. Our MDR was actually called MTR, Managed Threat Response. And it was called that because it only looked at Sophos products. It couldn't look at anyone else's. And we grew to be the world's largest vendor just on that. What's really interesting about this Qlic MDR launch is the integrations part, the fact that we can now integrate with multiple environments, which we'll talk about. But again, what makes it so simple, and one of the differentiators, is you have InterceptX Advanced included with that. You have InterceptX Advanced and XDR. And Sophos has been, trying to find the best ways to give access to that basic threat intelligence, even through products like InterceptX Advanced. So InterceptX Advanced has something called a threat case. And a threat case is generated anytime there's a detection. So if, for example, there was a detection with CryptoGuard, which is one of our anti-ransomware solutions, CryptoGuard has detected unauthorized encryption. What you can do is you can go into that InterceptX Advanced, go into the threat cases, and actually see this link analysis diagram that will show you where it started, the root cause, and then the beacon event where we picked it up. Not only will it show you that, but it will show you everything that happened in between. So we can see that there was a Microsoft Office file. That Microsoft Office file probably had a dodgy macro in it, ran PowerShell. PowerShell tried to run this confirmation executable, at which point, we were able to catch it and block it. But it gives you a chance to go in and see what the potential impact could have been, any other potential sources of compromise, and then also to start digging in if you've got things like XDR tools. You can use your XDR tools to do a cross-estate environment search to see if that confirmation executable exists on any other devices. So one of the things to keep in mind, MDR, they do all of that for you. There's an actual human going in there, looking at this threat case, analyzing it, doing that cross-estate threat hunt for you, making sure there's nothing else malicious, and then closing it down, giving you a case history and a report afterwards. Speaking of reports, so we have the ability to give you the monthly and weekly reports. This is information that Qlic absolutely makes use of. We've gone over these reports, and it's something that they're going to be able to look into, and review with you as well. So if that's something that interests you, if you think that, you could, make use of having that sort of security environment review, there's a good bit of data, about your environment, what our MDR team is doing that you can review. We'll do things like break down cases by types, whether it was an MDR investigation, and then what your health check score is, case activity by detection source, whether it's across your endpoints or servers, if you're using any integrations, where those are coming through, your event pipeline, so give you some good information there. All right, so doing pretty good on time. What I want to do is I want to go into the Sophos MDR integration. So again, if anyone has any questions at all, please feel free to pop them in the chat. I'll make sure we do have some time, for the Q&A. So with the integrations, this is what we released last November. This is what made the sort of Sophos, what we were able to say it's an actual MDR solution. Before we called it MTR, and rightly so. We couldn't really brand it MDR if we didn't integrate with anybody else. But what we do is we do have these integrations. We have quite a bit included within the MDR service. So we have integrations included with our Sophos XDR, if anyone is using a Sophos firewall, any other Sophos endpoint protection, email, or cloud products, Sophos within the cloud, our MDR team will ingest that data at no extra cost. They'll take all of that alert and event data and use that in their investigations. There will also be 90 days of data retention. And then what we also have included is integrations with Microsoft. So we have our Microsoft Graph Security integration, our Office 365 Management Activity integration, and our endpoint protection integrations are also included at no extra cost. So anybody using endpoint security, that's not with Sophos, but if you're using your endpoint security with Microsoft, CrowdStrike, SentinelOne, Trend Micro, any of those ones on that list, then we can take the event and alert data from there and action that as well. And the add-on integrations we have is the Sophos Network Detection and Response, so be able to monitor activity within your network. But then if you're using any other firewall vendors, vendors like Palo Alto or Fortinet or SonicWall, identity providers, so anyone using Okta, Duo, Manage Engine, Azure AD Identity Alerts, public cloud vendors like AWS, email vendors, if you've got Proofpoint or Mimecast, we can take the event and alert data from that, or network vendors like Darktrace, with the ability to upgrade to 1-year data retention. So included at no extra cost are actually everything we've got on this list here. And then we have add-on abilities. So we have these add-on integrations for these different vendors. So if you want to know more about those integrations, again, get in touch with your account manager at Qlic, and they can go over, talk about what those integrations can do. But what we're going to look at now is some examples of that. Why is it good to sort of, be able to see these different sources, and what do we actually do with it? What do we actually do with this data? So with the endpoint, we can detect suspicious activity of malware. With a firewall integration, we can look at intrusion attempts and beaconing attempts. Identity integrations allow us to detect unauthorized network entry and privilege escalation. Email integrations allow us to pinpoint the initial entry and attempts to steal or access data. So a lot of data exfiltration that happens through email security. Cloud solutions the cloud integration allows us to indicate unauthorized network access and efforts to exfiltrate data, and the network integration to look for things like rogue assets, unprotected devices, rogue devices on a network, and novel attacks. So I've got just a couple of examples here of how we can combine those insights. So let's say we've got our Sophos MDR, and they are looking at the endpoint, and there's also a firewall integration. So our Sophos MDR is looking at an endpoint and a firewall through any combination of those vendors. The endpoint tells us there's an unknown process execution on 10.00.33. The firewall also says DLP prevention on 10.00.33. And the same non-standard port usage, again, 10.00.33. What we have is an actual human team take that, look at both of those alerts, say I've got the unknown process, I've got the DLP prevention flagging, I've got the non-standard port usage, there's absolutely data exfiltration attempts happening. Turn that into a case, investigate it, and then go ahead and remediate that. The network and the endpoint. Our network detection has told us, so our NDR, whether again that's through Darktrace or Sophos NDR, we found out that there's a device communicating on the internal network, and we can tell through our endpoint security that it's not protected and it's not managed. We know that there is an unmanaged device communicating on that network. We can flag it, put all of the details, log that in a case, and then our SOC team can let you know. And the really interesting one is, let's look past two and look at three different ones here. So in this case, our Sophos MDR team is looking at email, endpoint, and an identity provider. The email solution has alerted us that there's suspected phishing email. So we can see that there's a suspected phishing email in the inbox. That's great. The email, it's doing its job. It's saying that there might be a phishing email. Endpoint is saying that a file has actually been downloaded, that suspicious file has downloaded, and that there's unexpected access to this executable. The identity provider has now had an alert, an abnormal location login to Office 365. And then the email has now given us another alert saying that a forwarding rule to an external account has been created. Now, if we didn't have this integration, it would absolutely be a manual process. It would take someone with the security knowledge and foresight to say, I've got this email alert, I've got this endpoint alert, I've got this identity provider alert, tie all that together. This is a dedicated team to use that insight. And the insight they get from that is that a successful phishing email has resulted in unauthorized access and potential business email compromise. And again, go through, log that. So the email, if we just recap that one, the email solution has said that there's a suspected phishing email. I'm guessing the user clicked on it, which we can confirm because the endpoint has said that a suspicious file has been downloaded with unexpected access to this executable. And my guess, my assumption, I'm not a threat intelligence analyst, but this executable is probably going to be part of our root cause for whatever's deployed, because now we have abnormal location login. So someone's trying to log into that Office 365 account. We can tell that through the identity provider alert. And then we have a forwarding rule to an external account created. Put all of that in context based on that order, and we can tell the phishing email has gone through, the file's been downloaded, someone's gotten unauthorized access, and there's potential compromise because of this forwarding rule to an external account, which means that anyone trying to email that employee is now going to this attacker. So different ways that we can combine insights. Just go ahead. Oh, there we go. And this is I think this is the last kind of big update I've got. Again, this is actually really exciting. This is brand new for Sophos. As a company, just released this in November, and as of last week on February 14th, we now cover all of our MSP Flex, so all of our managed service providers offering MDR complete, as Qlic is, are now all eligible for the Sophos Protection Breach Warranty. So I'll cover a little bit about this here. Now, this is a breach warranty that Sophos, that Qlic is able to enter in with Sophos once you have an MDR complete license on your machine. So we do things like if there is any type of ransomware incident within an environment that is protected, if the health check is green and you tick the boxes that everything is updated and protected, then we will reimburse up to $1,000 per breached machine, up to $1 million in total response expenses, and up to $100,000 for ransom payment. Again, in regards to ransom payment, I don't think it's a very good idea to pay ransoms. I know the US has actually gone and they've got that legislation making it illegal to pay the ransoms, but in the cases where that does happen, we do have some coverage for that. What this is really interesting also is if anyone out there is having those conversations around cyber insurance, which I know is getting, it's quite an interesting conversation in the cybersecurity community, because we don't sell cyber insurance, but we look at ways, how can we have our products and solutions help with cyber insurance conversations. So this is something to think about if you're having that cyber insurance conversation. Think about the fact that with MDR Complete, there's a dedicated incident response service and a team using an XDR tool. So if the cyber part of that cyber insurance auditing is, do you have an EDR or XDR tool? Not only can you click yes on that box, but you know that someone's actually using it. Do you have a dedicated incident response service in the event of a breach? Well, actually, yes, we do have a dedicated incident response service, and even more so, that dedicated incident response service also has a breach warranty that we could potentially apply for. So very, very interesting in regards to cyber insurance. So again, if you're interested more about how this works, you can see the terms and conditions for it on the Sophos legal site, or you can reach out to your Qlic account manager to learn more about that Sophos breach protection warranty.